You may or may not have heard from other sources today that Roland have brought out a new kit, the Roland TD-07KV. This kit is being positioned between the entry-level Roland TD-1DMK and the TD-17KV. Roland were kind enough to send me one of these kits to try out, so today we're going to be taking a look at what's in the box and giving my first impressions on both the kit and the module sounds and features. This kit wasn't a freebie, I will be giving it back once I'm done with it, and I've not been asked to say anything in particular about this kit. This will all be my personal first impressions of the kit, but I will be taking into account who this kit is aimed at because I'm definitely not the target market. There will be a full in-depth review coming down the line once I've been able to delve a little bit deeper, along with a few other videos such as setup guides for beginners, some tips and tricks on how to get the best sound you can out of the module feature walkthroughs, and a shootout between this module and the TD-17, the TD-27 and the TD-50. Do I have the TD-27 module? So make sure that you're subscribed and that you hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of these future videos. But for now, let's take a look at the kit. So as the kit is being unboxed, anybody familiar with Roland products will probably agree that this kit is reasonably typical of what you would expect from Roland. It's effectively taking the spot of the TD-17KL in terms of pricing, which is around £899, $999 and €999. And it's using a PDX-8 pad for the snare and the PDX-6A pads for the toms. So there's no rubber pads here for the toms, which I think is great to see in comparison to something like the TD-17KL. However, they are still single zone pads. So I think that it's nice that they've now got a full mesh kit at this price point. And in fact, they now have full mesh kits at all price points, which I think is a good move that puts them more in line with other low-end kit offerings these days. When comparing this kit to something like the TD-1DMK, which is the next step down, this kit is definitely an upgrade. This kit comes with a brand new module, the TD-07 module, which I'll get into soon, and unlike the TD-1 offerings, this does have a standalone kick tower with the KD-10. It is using the same kind of hi-hat controller as the TD-1DMK though, and it also comes with the usual range of CY5 and CY8 cymbals that you would typically expect a Roland kit to have at this price point. It comes with the MDS compact rack, which again is sort of a staple around this price point as it's been featured on the TD-1 and TD-17 lines. It's functional, it's sturdy, it keeps everything where it needs to be, and as the name suggests, is pretty compact, which suits this kind of kit. So at this point it is mostly what you would expect, though there are a couple of improvements that I think would have been nice. There's some elements of the kit that are an upgrade from the TD-17KL, such as the mesh all around and some of the module features that I'll get to soon. But there are some parts that are a little bit of a downgrade more towards the TD-1DMK spec, like the hi-hat pedal. The TD-17KL model came with the FD9 hi-hat pedal, which as far as I'm aware is a really solid pedal. Admittedly, I've only had a chance to try that pedal out myself a couple of times, so I'm going on limited experience and the experience of other users. The pedal that comes with the TD-07KV kit is a lot more basic. On the bottom, it's labelled as the FD1 pedal, but it's not a product that they sell alone, it tends to only be bundled in with the lower end kits. And of course, I do understand that there needs to be a bit of a distinction between the price ranges, but it's a bit of a shame that something that used to be a feature at this price point now isn't. The toms being single zone using the PDX-6A pads is a little bit harder to quantify. The TD-17KL came with the PD-8A rubber pads, which were also mono pads, so there's not a downgrade in function of the pads alone there, and it comes down to personal preference whether you think that losing 1.5 inches of playing surface is worth the upgrade to mesh. However, the one thing that the TD-17L module did have going for it is that it did still support dual zone toms if you wanted to upgrade in the future like the normal TD-17 module does. You don't get that option with the 07 module. The module doesn't support dual zone toms and the cable snake only has mono connectors to reflect that. Now, is this a real problem for the target market of the kit? Possibly not. But I always prefer to have options in there for upgrades if you do want to pursue them. And of course, there's always going to be some kind of discussion when it comes to Roland's pricing versus the competition. Whether you're looking at pad sizes or the side-by-side spec comparisons, I think it's going to be an unavoidable part of this kit's discussion too. Some will say that this is expensive compared to the competition. On the flip side of this argument, these are Roland's usual standard of solid, time-tested components that rarely cause many issues for many people. So you're always going to have to weigh in that factor when it comes to making a decision about these kind of kits. I've not fully made up my mind on that area yet, so I'll get to that in the full review. The main thing that I think could either sell or detract from this kit offering is the new module. The module has surprised me a little bit, so let's talk about it. Off the bat, the TD-07 is an interesting name. There has already been a Roland TD-7 module in the past. This was quite some time ago, all the way back in 1992, before they were using the dbdrums branding as far as I'm aware. It's completely unrelated. The 07 has been intentionally named to appear as part of the same family as the 17 and the 27, and in that respect I feel like it kind of makes sense. If you look at these modules together, you can tell that they're part of the same family and you can tell what the logical progression is, though of course the TD-50 appears to be the outlier here. When looking at the modules in the tiers both above and below it, you find that the TD-1 module is very bare bones, some buttons, a small 3-digit screen, metronome coach and song features. It gives you 15 kits and there's no V-edit parameters to tweak. No tuning, muffling, ambience, etc. What you have in each kit is what you get, and there's no user kits to speak of. It's very much a beginner experience, typically to be used as a learning or practice tool, and that fits it completely fine for the target audience and the price range. The TD-17 module was a significant jump up from the TD-1. You get a bunch of V-edit options, you get EQ, ambience and sample imports. The TD-07 definitely sits in between the two feature-wise, but it actually does lean closer to the TD-17 than I thought it would. On the face of it, the screen is very small. The TD-17 screen was already pretty small, but this is even slimmer, and the amount of buttons and dials is very minimal. You've got your simple navigation buttons to the left and a dial in the middle. Then on the right you have the buttons for the power and the different functions. Along the top edge of the module there's a single 1/8 inch or 3.5mm jack output. This is a combined output for either headphones or sending out to another device. And you've got the same sized mix-in for the audio input, a USB port for USB MIDI or audio over USB, and the power cable port. And that's the lot. Now this simplicity is great for beginners because it's not going to overface anybody. However, there are a few knobs and buttons that I think it would have been nice to include for the sake of functionality, and to allow people to avoid the heavy menu diving a bit more in line with the TD-17. There's also the option to add one more pad to your setup. Rather than using a separate trigger input jack, it's already built into the cable as the Crash 2 cable. However, of course, this can be assigned to whatever sound you want, not just a crash sound. And there's actually also the option to utilize this as a ride bell zone if you want to upgrade your ride pad instead. So if you did want to swap out for a CY13R as your ride symbol and use the bell zone, you can do. This is a feature that I actually wish was built into every other drum module. I feel like if you want to be able to sacrifice a trigger input for an extra bell zone, you should be able to, so it's great to see that here. But anyway, I'll touch more on the module features in depth in the full review. If you compare this to the TD-17 in terms of sounds, the instrument amount is of course lower, as you would expect. There's 310 individual instruments in the TD-17, whereas there's 143 in the 07. TD-27, and you don't get the ability to layer or sample import on the 07. In terms of the sounds themselves, a lot of them are actually very similar to what's found in the TD-17. The acoustic style snares I noticed are pretty much the same sounds, and many of the kicks and the toms also appear to be from the same or at least similar sample sets. And of course you've got the usual range of additional electronic and percussion sounds in there too. And all the sounds are decent enough. Most people will know by now whether they like Roland's sound signature or not, but I think that they get the job done. They sound decent enough for beginners or new electronic drum players to get on with playing, and there's actually a surprising amount of control in there for a module of this level. This module retains a lot of the V-Edit parameters such as tuning and muffling, which you don't usually get at this level, but not only that, it also has individual pad EQ, ambience settings, though it's labelled as room here, and it even adds in the transient controls and the overhead options from the TD-27 and TD-50 modules. So those last two in particular really caught me off guard. These are features that I would like to have seen in the TD-17 module, and they make a really big difference when it comes to building your own kits. So it's really interesting and positive to see them in here at this price level. They add a lot of extra dimension and weight to the sounds, especially when you couple them with the EQ settings. And I would actually say that you could potentially push the individual sounds in this module further than you can on the TD-17. After a little bit of use, the transient and overhead controls really do make that much difference. However, of course, because you don't have the ability to layer two sounds or import your own, there is a little bit less flexibility overall. Now, when you're looking at the out-of-the-box sound, the presets are actually very functional. I was pleasantly surprised to find that they show off a lot more versatility than Roland presets often do. I went through the first 4 presets and checked all of the snares, actually expecting to see different snare samples, but they were all the same one. And that's really great because it's actually demonstrating to you how far you can push each of those sounds. There's 25 preset kits and 25 user slots, though of course you can edit any of the presets too. So here's a few examples of the stock presets and a few examples of my own kits that I knocked together. So there is quite a lot of scope for customization for a module of this tier. And another nice inclusion that they've carried over from the TD-17 and the TD-27 is the Bluetooth for audio input. You can play along to any music that you like using this function, and there's also MIDI over Bluetooth functionality as well. Now, one of the main reasons that this is a plus at this particular price point is that the TD-17L module didn't have the Bluetooth feature. It was basically the one feature that was missing compared to the normal 17 module. Quiet practice along with your favourite music is of course one of the big selling points of electronic drums to a lot of people. So having the ability to do that without any wires getting in the way is a function that I think should be standard from now on. So to sum up my first impressions of the kit, It's a little bit of a mixed bag, but I am leaning more towards positive than negative overall, despite how it might seem, because I do have a tendency to pick up on what's not in there rather than focusing on what is in there. There is part of me that to some extent does think maybe this could have just been bundled in with a TD-17 module, upgrading the pads to mesh away from rubber and keeping in that nicer hi-hat pedal. But on the other hand, there's a few features in here that are arguably an upgrade from the TD-17 module. So it puts this kit and module in a really interesting spot. And if for a moment I ignore what was in this price slot before, the overall package on offer is very enticing to newer players. You get everything that you might need to get going other than a throne, a kick pedal and headphones, but that's standard pretty much across the board. It's a much more capable kit and setup than the TD1 DMK. The module's got a lot of promise, and sitting down at the kit to play it, it is very fun. And for all intents and purposes, if this is within your budget and it's what you're looking for, that's what matters the most. So I am actually looking forward to getting fully stuck in with this kit for the full review. Will it be more impressive with more time spent on it? You'll have to wait and see. But even more importantly, what do you think of this kit? I can't really imagine anybody above the entry level to intermediate drummer rushing out to buy this kit, but maybe you do fit into that target audience, so is this something that you would consider for yourself, or even another member of your family, or as a recommendation to a friend? Let me know down in the comments. I'd especially like to hear from anybody who's either just getting into e-drums or who is looking to upgrade from another entry level kit. And of course, if you enjoyed this video or you found it useful in any way, please consider popping a like on it and sharing it with anybody else that you think might find it useful. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell if you haven't already so that you can catch the next videos. And above all, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers!